In the last chapter, we talked about John Adams and how he became president and some of the challenges he faced. And at the end, we talked about the election of 1800, where Thomas Jefferson was able to become president. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about what he did once he was the president. So Thomas Jefferson was a rich landowner from Virginia, but even though he was rich, he didn't dress in fancy clothes. He dressed kind of like a regular person. A lot of people thought he didn't look professional and was kind of grumpy. But he had a lot of credibility because he was the main writer of the Declaration of Independence. And his philosophy about what the government could do was a little bit different than John Adams. He believed that the government could only do what the Constitution specifically allowed. So if it didn't say you could do it in the Constitution, he didn't think it was the government's job. So when Jefferson was inaugurated or sworn in as president, he gave a speech and he urged the two political parties to stop their bickering and cooperate. So instead of being divided, he wanted the two parties to join together for the good of the country. While he was president, he did a couple of really important things. One of the first things he did was get rid of the Alien and Sedition Acts. So that's the law that made it so immigrants had to wait longer to vote and made it illegal to speak out against the government. He got rid of those, and he ended up wiping people's records if they were convicted under that law. He lowered the amount of time you had to live in America from 14 years down to 5. He was able to lower the federal debt, which means we owed less money. The United States Military Academy at West Point was established, and he made it so slaves could no longer be imported. So that didn't mean slavery was illegal, but he was trying to stop there from being more slaves brought into the country. Unfortunately, it doesn't really stop what happens, and many more slaves are brought in illegally. And the last thing, one of the biggest things he does, is he buys Louisiana Territory. So after the French and Indian War, France had surrendered some land west of the Mississippi River to Spain. So this is land that's ours today, but it wasn't ours yet. It belonged to France, and then France gave it to Spain. In 1800, Spain had been forced to return some of that land back to France. So this land's gone back and forth a couple of times. And Jefferson doesn't like this move. The reason why is we had a deal with Spain to let us use Louisiana. They were letting us ship things through there, and we had a good deal set up with Spain. They let us travel as long as we were following their rules. Now that there's a new owner, they're going to shut it down. So France says, you know what, you guys can't use New Orleans and the Mississippi River anymore. So that would be like if you're on your way to school and there's a guy's house where if you cut through his backyard, it'll save you 20 minutes on your walk. Now, if you talk to that guy and have a good relation set up, you can use that shortcut every day. But once a new owner comes in and buys that house, you might not be able to use that shortcut anymore. And that's basically what happened to us here. We lost our shortcut because France took ownership of New Orleans. So President Jefferson sends a guy named James Monroe to France, and he tells him, work out a deal. Buy as much of New Orleans as you can for $10 million. There's another man named Robert Livingston who's already there in France trying to work out a deal with Napoleon. And Napoleon, the leader from France, realizes now that we want this land. So we offer $10 million for New Orleans, and Napoleon says, nah, how about we do this? $15 million, and I'll give you all of the Louisiana Territory. And we'll see that on a map in a second. So this ends up being a huge chunk of land, over 800,000 square miles. It costs about 3 cents per acre. So if you think about the school is like 2 acres. So that would be like 6 cents for the property back then. So Jefferson says, sounds like a great deal. He asks Congress to approve it and vote to accept this purchase. And Congress votes, and they decide to go ahead with the Louisiana Purchase. So in the election of Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican, had caused an even sharper divide between the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists. Those are the two main political parties. And the Federalists think that the purchase of the Louisiana Territory is a waste of money. They thought that it didn't matter this land was cheap, the land was worthless. So they're basically saying it doesn't matter if it's a good deal if you're not going to use it. So that would be like if Domino's is offering a deal on pizzas. Large pizzas are $2 a piece, but you have to get anchovies and pineapple on it. It's not really a good deal if it's got a bunch of stuff you don't like or don't need. And that's kind of what they're saying about the Louisiana Territory. The Federalists feel like it's just a waste of land and a waste of money. They were also afraid that adding these new states would take away from their power. So what happens is a lot of people see this big chunk of land that we bought, and they don't have the same opinion as the Federalists. They think that this land is going to be like an adventure for America. It's going to give us a chance to grow, and there's a new like American spirit. People start being proud and wanting to go explore this new territory. So what happens is Thomas Jefferson becomes even more popular. So with the addition of the Louisiana Territory, we're going to expand west. So if you take a look at this map, this was everything we had before. And we paid $15 million, and we got this yellow section in the middle. And we're going to want to move that way. So one of the big concerns is whether or not slavery is going to spread. So if you think back just a little bit, a chapter or two ago, we talked about some compromises that were made, like the slave trade compromise and the 3/5 compromise. And a lot of this land has good warm weather. So it is most likely going to be a slave state. The highlighter's fighting with me here, so I can't highlight this part. But what's going to happen if a whole bunch more slave states get added, then the slave states will get more power. And they'll be able to basically make all the decisions. So why was the Louisiana Purchase so important then? The Louisiana Territory basically doubled the size of our country. So for $15 million, we were able to double the entire size of the country and everything we owned. Now America controls the entire Mississippi River, and we can use the port at New Orleans, which means we can ship things more easily and sell things for a better profit. America has gained tons of resources from this land, and eventually this land that we paid $15 million for will be divided into 15 new states: Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, Texas, New Mexico, and Montana. Okay guys, so we'll keep the lesson shorter today. Let's get started on the worksheet for today's lesson.